that you've taken time off. These meetings will never, well, not never say never, but these meetings are not intended to go beyond 45 minutes, 30 minutes to 45 minutes each time we run them. So without further ado, let me welcome you to the first session of the subcommittee of our organization dealing specifically with summative assessment. What I want to do is I want to give you a very brief introduction to what it is we are doing, and then to the subcommittee, the terms of reference for the subcommittee, and then tell you what the next couple of months is going to look like as far as the subcommittee activity is concerned, and more importantly, as far as the entire professional body's activity is concerned. If you do want to ask a question, please feel free to unmute your microphone and just ask, or alternatively, you can type in the chat link, which is at the bottom of your page. So the Professional Body for Digital Practitioners is an organization which is primarily about creating a professional identity for those people who work in the digital sector as a whole. As you can see from the slide which is on your screen, I want to talk about the role of the patrons of the professional body. I want to tell you how we've defined the sector. I want to tell you what the objectives of the PDP itself is. I want to describe very briefly the machine of the PDP to you. We will talk about ethics and how ethics looks to be enforced. And we will talk about the commitments that I've asked from CEOs in the sector to the professional body and why that should impact on you in terms of the work that we do in the subcommittee. And finally, we'll talk about the public compact, which is why we're creating this professional body in the first place. As far as the sector is concerned, we have identified the sector for digital practitioners as primarily the following: agencies, publishers, consultants and educators, and then as far as the brands are concerned, those in-house people who act as consultants, either because they originate digital work themselves or alternatively because they work with agencies and publishers in terms of developing digital work which goes out to their client and their corporate base. So as things stand at this moment in time, these are the four industries which we say constitutes the digital practitioner sector. There are obviously many more industries. In fact, the reality is that as wide as the economy is, with as many industries in that economy as is the scope of the digital sector, every industry is becoming digital, and there are digital practitioners in every industry. However, for purposes of us managing what it is we're trying here to manage, we are saying that in the short term, at least, these are the industries we will focus on to find digital practitioners in, to professionally designate and recognize those digital practitioners, to give them an opportunity for lifelong learning, which is continuous professional development, etc. So that is primarily where we are at this moment in time. The objectives of the professional body for digital practitioners. Well, certainly as far as the individuals are concerned, we are looking at the individuals having independent recognition of their professional status, their competency and their currency in terms of best practice, and the accountability of those practitioners in terms of their conduct, their behavior, and their integrity. Ultimately, at the end of the day, a professional designation is made up of these three things. Professional recognition is made up of these three things. It is your professionalism, your competency, and your integrity. And so when the professional body for digital practitioners makes a statement and says that an individual is a professional, we are saying they're a professional with regard to these three elements. As far as companies are concerned, and we want to be able to appeal as much to companies as we do to the individual practitioners, the companies which are members of the professional body in one way or another will be distinct in the marketplace. We'll recognize those companies as excellent, particularly in terms of the practice of their employees. And when we say employees, we're going all the way to the top. We're saying all the way through to owner, managers, directors in that organization. These are the people we want to be recognized publicly as professional digital practitioners, and companies that employ these individuals as excellent companies which are accountable, competent, and from an ethics point of view, have ethical standards for their employees, if not for themselves as practitioners. One of the things we are absolutely adamant on in the professional body for digital practitioners is that for an employee to receive professional recognition and therefore to be designated, that employee has to belong to a company which is a member of an association which is party to the professional body. At this moment in time, there is only one association party to the professional body, and that's the IAB South Africa. But over time, we envisage that other trade associations and employer associations will want to join with the professional body, and it is that we're actually looking to encourage amongst the workplaces, that the company should be accountable, even if it's not to the IAB SA, should be accountable to the professional body in some form or another. As far as the consumer is concerned, we're saying that there are two sets of benefits for the consumer to the professional body for digital practitioners existing. The first is the accountability of the company itself, where we're saying that the company is accountable. It's accountable to a community of its peers within its trade or employer association, and the individuals are accountable to the professional body. So there is accountability for competency, for experience, and for behavior and integrity that runs throughout both the individuals and the companies they work for. So those are the objectives, in short, of the professional body for digital practitioners. At this stage, what I'd like to do is I would like to focus then on the machine that we have built for practitioners in the sector. And it's not a complicated machine, although it has multiple elements to it. And so because of that, we need these elements to a reference to one another. The primary tool of the designation machine that we've built are what we call professional designation centers. So in other words, a professional body is not building new red brick and mortar places to run itself from. It will be run through a series of designation centers, and those designation centers will either be large training providers that have a critical mass of people who've received digital qualifications from, or alternatively, it will be provincial centers, and we're looking eventually to have at least one provincial center in each province. Now, the large training provider type of designation center might also, in the short term at least, be our provincial centers. And finally, our designation center model allows for in-house designation centers for those companies which employ many people who are digital practitioners, and hence we license them to offer professional body services to the people they employ as an in-house designation center, where we look to pair them or partner them with pre-existing designation centers. Are there any questions at this stage? Because I realize I am going quite quickly. All right. No questions. Let me move on then. I hope that everybody can still hear me. Okay. Now, Brandon can and Jean said. Fine. Okay, good. So the designations is the meat and potato vehicle of what it is a professional body offers to recipients. And if I can give you a practical example, a professional body such as SAICA, which is the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, its principal designation is the Chartered Accountant designation. So it is a Chartered Accountant designation that it offers to accountants. An accountant gets a qualification from Wits University. It writes the board examination, and then it receives a professional designation. The board examination is the summative assessment instrument of the professional body. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the quality assurance subcommittee that I'm addressing now. And it's the quality assurance subcommittee of the professional body for digital practitioners that will ultimately be responsible for ensuring the existence and the quality and the regular review of the summative assessment instruments that the designation centers will use for the professional body. So it is us It is those people on the line now. It is Brandon. It is the two Chris's. It's Duncan. It's Jean. It's Leon. It's Louis. It is us who, in fact, will be responsible for signing off on the summative assessment instruments that are developed for every one of the designations which is offered by the professional body. Now, that's an absolutely critical statement that I've made, and certainly talks to one of the essential responsibilities of the Quality Assurance Subcommittee, which is those people on the line at this moment in time. There are three categories of designations. I call them bands. There are three bands of our designations. The lowest band is the technical band. Then we move to the operational band. And finally, we move to the professional band. So there are three levels or three bands of professional recognition that the professional body will be offering. Initially, there will be one designation in each of these bands, but eventually there is an opportunity to have multiple designations and even to distinguish the designations between the agencies, the publishers, the consultants, and the in-house consultants in the brands. So over time, we will look to have multiple designations in each of these bands. But initially, we will have one generic designation in each of these three bands, being the professional digital technician, professional digital operator, and the chartered professional digital practitioner as the three bands, technical, operational, and professional. Like I say, over time, we will have multiple designations in each of those bands, and presumably also cutting across the industries within the digital sector, which, as I've said, would be agencies, would be publishers, would be the consultants, and would be the in-house consultants under the brands. There is, as you can see from the graphic in front of you, there is also a fourth band of professional recognition or designation, and that's the master band of professional designation. Now, this is one designation category that an individual can't apply for, but that they get nominated towards. It's normally got to do with the fact that the person being nominated has been in multiple industries within the digital space for a long period of time. In other words, they are the true heroes of the sector or the industries, and therefore they deserve to be recognized by having a master professional digital practitioner designation conferred upon them without them having to apply for that designation. So there are three operational or in-company designation categories: the technical, operational, and professional. And then there is one which is an honorary or a conferred status, being master practitioner. Any questions at this stage? No? All right, moving on then. So there are three elements, as I previously mentioned. There are three elements to professional designation. The first is the element of competence, which is normally indicated by one of two pathways. Either the individual has received a qualification, which is recognized by the professional body, which is endorsed by the professional body, from a training provider who's endorsed by the professional body, or the individual has been in the job for so long that they're capable of being RPL'd. RPL is recognition of prior learning. In other words, they're capable of being assessed by a trained and qualified assessor to the same outcomes as if they had been registered for a qualification and had graduated with that qualification. That's what RPL means. The second element of professional designation is that of experience. And here, our job is to create a vault for each individual who wants to be professionally designated, where they can upload their evidence, the portfolio of their evidence, which indicates that they have applied the competency that they've been trained to apply in the workplace, and that competency can be evaluated because the evidence is tangible, it's in the workplace, it can be evaluated by trained assessors, and the work can be moderated by trained moderators. And then the third element for professional designation to happen is that of integrity. And here we're saying annual references based on competence and behavior of the people applying for professional recognition. So when we say that a person is professionally recognizable, it means we have designated them with a designation because they have a qualification, or at least they're at the same stage as if they'd had a qualification. They have evidenced experience and they have established their integrity. And it is those three in combination that the professional body then stands behind in declaring and designating a person to be professional. As far as the machine of professional recognition is concerned, we have built an online portal, which we refer to as a management information system, an online portal, which we refer to as a management information system, where we are able to capture a portfolio of evidence in the vaults for every applicant. We have neutral administration of the applications in the designation centers and also in the professional body itself. We have a neutral assessment of those applications by trained assessors and a neutral moderation and confirmation of applications by trained assessors and moderators. We provide opportunities for remediation. So someone applies, but they don't tick all the boxes. We encourage them and we guide them through a remediation process. And finally, our machine manages to award designations to applicants who qualify in terms of competence, experience, and integrity. So that is the machine that we have built, and we've built it with the participation of the IAB and with our first designation center, which is the Blue Magnet Designation Center. I say it's the first because we anticipate having multiple designation centers eventually throughout the country. The thing is that it is only once an individual is professionally designated by a professional body that the clock starts ticking, that our relationship really starts. We can really start to begin to find out more about that individual. And really that person is on a 3-year track to re-registration for the designation. It is only in that period, once they've been designated, while they are moving towards re-registration in 3 years' time, that we will really get to know that individual. We will really get to know whether everything they've told us about themselves and their documentation stands up and has currency. So the machine for lifelong learning and best practice, which is essentially continuous professional development, kicks off once the individual has been professionally designated by the professional body. It is a continuous professional development machine focusing on best practice. It is a combination of in-house training and activity with the professionally designated people, which the professional body will look at and will endorse. It is a combination of training providers offering continuous professional development elements, and it is a combination of supplier training in terms of systems knowledge, product knowledge, platform knowledge, etc., etc. So that machine of CPD kicks off once an individual is professionally designated by the professional body. As far as quality control is concerned, well, the quality control happens in a number of different areas, and all of those areas this particular subcommittee will touch upon. So, for example, our policy and procedure for the endorsement of training providers, of their learning programs, whether those learning programs are whole programs or non-accredited programs or continuous professional development programs, they have to be endorsed by the professional body, in other words, recognized. And then also very, very important, what this subcommittee is responsible for is the development of neutral summative assessment activities, which means that when we come back to the three elements of professional designation, and we say that the first element is competence, that the person has received a qualification, or that they've been RPL'd to the point where we say that they're equivalent, their competencies are equivalent to as if they'd received a qualification. At that stage, we want them all to go through a summative assessment process. At the junior levels, at the technician levels, the summative assessment might be as simple as a multiple choice test, whereas at the more senior level, which is at the chartered digital professional practitioner level, at that professional level, it might be as much as a board assessment by 3 other professionals who sit around the table, interview the candidate, and just verify all of the information that has been presented. The nature of those summative assessments is what will be put before you, the Quality Assurance Subcommittee, so that you're able to look at the work that's been done by the professionals that we use in creating the summative assessments, and you're able to authorize those summative assessments so that everybody going through the application process will have to go through the same summative assessments ultimately at the end of the day. We're not asking you to develop those summative assessments. What we're asking you to do is, as they get developed, we're asking you to look at them and give us your opinion and your views. In other words, are we on the right pathway in terms of trying to assess the true competency of these individuals against the evidence presented, or in fact, are we missing the point? Is the summative assessment too academic and not practical enough to really be touching on what digital practice is in South Africa, but also on a global basis? So that is the primary responsibility, besides the endorsement element, of this Quality Assurance Committee. Any points or any questions about the points that I've made thus far? Okay, very interesting. I hope that, everybody says all good so far, so good, very exciting. Brandon, it is very exciting because ultimately when an employee in your business turns around and says, I just went through the summative assessment for the professional operator, professional digital operator. It was a very steep summative assessment, or it was too easy, or something like that. Whatever those comments are, it is a reflection on the work which eventually will be done by this subcommittee that I'm talking to now, which is the Quality Assurance Subcommittee. And so we want to, one thing I need to say to you is that a professional body is created on a voluntary basis. So we're creating the professional body now within the context of the relationship between employers who are IAB members and the employees in those businesses. It's a voluntary professional body. The South African Qualifications Authority says that when a voluntary professional body has reached a critical mass of people who it has awarded designations to in all of the categories in its designation spreadsheet or framework, or as they call it, a taxonomy. Once it has, for argument's sake, 100 people in each of the designation areas, we then apply to the South African Qualifications Authority for the registration of the professional body and the registration of the designations. Now that becomes critically important because it's at that stage that companies can count the money that they spend on their staff attaining professional recognition from the professional body, can count that as skills development spend for triple BE purposes. And there are 7 categories now for skills development spend, and the last 2 of those categories are the professional body related and in-house training related activities which occur within the industry. So it's critically important that we get as quickly as possible to a critical mass in our pilots of people who've obtained our professional designations, so we're able to make that application to the South African Qualifications Authority. And one of the things the South African Qualifications Authority is going to be focusing on to a very large extent is the nature of our summative assessment activities and our quality assurance activities. So the bottom line is that we want to be in a position to make sure that those summative assessments are meaningful in terms of what you, the people in the industry, the sector, and the industries which make up the sector of digital practice consider to be meaningful, not just academic. We are not interested in the fact that a person has obtained a qualification which is an Irish qualification from the Irish Digital Association. That means nothing to the professional body. What is important is whether that individual, because they have that qualification, can pass and can get through the summative assessment as we determine, we collectively, those of us on the subcommittee, and finally the council of the professional body authorized, as we determine is important. So we are not necessarily interested in the qualifications or in fact any international brands of those qualifications. We are interested in asking this question: has obtaining that qualification made the individual sufficiently competent so that they can get through the summative assessment, which is a neutral instrument against which we award professional designations to the beneficiaries? Duncan Palmer has made a statement. He says, I understand the need to get the ball rolling and begin the designation process. Could you give an overview example of the type of job titles which would fall under the three types of designations? Duncan, thank you so much for that question. I'm going to go one further than that. And what we've done is with our pilot professional designation center, which is the Blue Magnet designation center, which has been registered independently of Blue Magnet, the company. What the Blue Magnet Designation Center has done is they've taken all of the job profiles that have been identified in the digital sector to date, and they've mapped those job profiles to our designations, but they've also mapped their qualifications that they've identified to the job profiles, which means we have a three-stage link. We are now able to say that for a professional designation, these are the people in the job categories who might interest. And those people in those job categories must have obtained the following set of qualifications, or at least been RPL'd, recognized for their highest level of training, have been recognized to that highest level of competence against that qualification standard. So I think that that's very, very important. By the way, Leon, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. And I'll copy you with this recording from beginning to end. So thank you. I realize you have to leave. All right. So what I'm saying in response to you, Duncan, then, is that I'm saying that we will be able to distribute to you the full designation map, which maps the qualifications to the jobs to the designations. And remember that this is the start of the process. We know that there are going to be many more qualifications we look to endorse. And we know equally that there are many more job categories than those which will have been identified, which are affected by those qualifications, which can be mapped to the professional designations, that is the meat and potato of the professional body via the summative assessment process. There was a question here. Jean's question, when does this start? And then how long till it becomes a reality? Well, Jean, it's been ongoing now for 12 to 18 months, number one. The machine is in place. The portal is in place. The portal will be live from the 1st of February that everybody will be invited to have a look at and give their input into. Our mapping with our first designation center has been done for the qualifications to the jobs to the designations. We are piloting with the graduates of the Blue Magnet group through the Blue Magnet Designation Center to test the entire system. We are looking to mainstream by the end of July, beginning August, into the sector or the industry as a whole. It might be a lot sooner than that. I'm just giving you the latest kind of deadlines we're looking for. And we're looking to have gone beyond our pilot project, therefore, by the beginning of August. We are hoping that by the 1st of June, we will be able to bring the mainstreaming, the opportunity to offer it just beyond the graduates of the Blue Magnet Center, because everything works and everything is in place. We're looking June, if not the beginning of May, that we're looking to mainstream. But I'm being very optimistic there, so I don't want to give a false promise. It's taken us a lot of false delays and false starts to get to this point, only because this is new. We're not yet at critical mass, and importantly, the value of the professional recognition is not something which has any currency at all in any of the industries or the digital sector. Jean, I hope that answers your question. Good, moving on. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do want to comment, please just unmute your microphone so you can talk. And I would encourage you to talk. Good. Okay, moving on then. Governance and oversight. Just to tell you how the professional body is governed, well, the professional body consists of chambers for the agencies, the publishers, the consultants, and the brands. And those chambers, what we're trying to do is we're trying to give companies an opportunity to affiliate with the chamber that makes most sense for their critical mass of business. There are some companies which cut across all of those, and we are therefore asking them to make a primary choice. In other words, where let's say 40 to 50 to 60% of their critical core business rests, does it rest in any of those four clusters of industries. Now, from those chambers, the chair and the vice chair of each of those chambers constitute the National Council of the professional body. And then from the National Council, we delineate our subcommittees. At the moment, we have the following subcommittees. We have Designation, Design and Review as one committee. We have Quality Assurance, which is you guys, which is the second committee. We have Education and Endorsement. We have Marketing, and we have Continuous Professional Development. So those are currently the 5 working committees of the professional body. Some of them might be merged in the future. We might end up with more in the future. But that's certainly how we get the professional body off of the ground. There is a document that you should already have received from Toka, my assistant, and that is the document with the definitions and the explanations of the various subcommittees and, in fact, what the professional body is and why it exists. We will, of course, also be sending you out this presentation, and we will also, of course, be sending you out a link to the audio recording of this discussion we're having so that everybody is aware of everything that is going on, including those people who were not able, in fact, to make this meeting. I think it's absolutely critical, ladies and gentlemen, that you understand this particular factor, and that is this, that we do not want the professional body to be the upper guardian of ethical conduct for those people that we are recognizing as professionals or for those companies employing those professionals. Indeed, we want the associations, such as, for example, the IAB, to be the location where ethical investigations, ethical determinations, the training of people to conciliate and mediate on ethical disputes, etc., where all of that happens. And we're going to see many more disputes in the future when it comes to the professional body, because when it comes to the ethical conduct, that's where you find, or behavior of the individual, that's where you find most of your ethical complaints from either other companies, from peers, from clients, from suppliers, and in fact, even from the general public. And so what we're saying is we're building a repository where ethical complaints can be laid against people who have been professionally designated. And we will then refer those ethical complaints back to the structure that we contract to manage ethics in the professional body. Ideally, we want the individual who wants to be professionally designated to work for a company which is a member of the IAB or another association which is a member of the professional body, and we encourage associations to become our members, so that we can then refer the ethics investigation to that association to complete, and we as a professional body will then simply quality assure the ethical investigation to make sure that the standards for conciliation, for mediation, for arbitration, and for appeal have been kept to. So we see the professional body when it comes to ethics as an arbiter, as a quality assurance mechanism, not as the organization which in fact conducts the ethical investigations. Ethics will fall squarely under the quality assurance subcommittee of the professional body. You guys, the people I'm talking to now, you will be presented with a typical code of ethics, which we want to cut across all associations, or that associations can map to. You will be presented with a policy mechanism that we want to see in place in all of those associations for how ethical complaints are investigated and are reported on, or conciliated, or mediated, or arbitrated, etc. And importantly, if there is an appeal, so an individual, a member of the public would lay an ethics complaint against someone, let's say it's Chris Lowe for argument's sake, about their behavior, very seldom about their competency, but more often about their behavior. That ethics complaint will then be referred to the IAB if Chris's company is a member of the IAB. The IAB will then investigate that ethics complaint. They will then notify the professional body of the outcome of the investigation. The professional body will then notify the person laying the complaint, as well as Chris Lowe, the person who's been complained about. Both parties then have an opportunity to appeal. The appeal will come to the professional body. The appeal committee will be constituted from amongst the quality assurance subcommittee, which is you guys or other people that you determine should be on the list of people who can hear appeals, in which case they will be trained up by the professional body. And then the result of the appeal will be published to the individuals concerned. And the precedent of the appeal, rather than the names of the individuals or the companies, will be published as a precedent within the professional body for ethical behavior. So that's very much how ethics is going to work. I see that there is a question from Chris that says, have any other industry bodies been approached yet? Yes, Chris, a number of them over the last 2 years have been approached. They've all had different reasons for not wanting to come to one central party, but very little has happened in this field. My feeling is that once we're going and once we're operational, they will want to come back to the party. And then another question from Chris is, are there specific organizations we are looking at in this regard? Yes. Well, we're looking at the IAB South Africa as the association. We have a number of companies that have agreed to participate in the pilot, and we're always open for new companies or additional companies to participate in the pilot. But just to give you an indication, we had Native, which volunteered. We had DSG, which volunteered. We had Etiquette in Pretoria that volunteered. So we've had a number of companies that have volunteered to date. We're most probably going to end up with about 5 or 6 companies in the pilot group, which takes us beyond Blue Magnet. So what will happen is that once we've piloted with Blue Magnet amongst its graduates to get to a critical stage of testing our machinery, we will then pilot with those companies that have volunteered their staff to go through the process, and only then will we mainstream. I'm hoping that we will be there by May, but the latest date we want to be there by is the 1st of August for both of those things to have taken place. John says, my apologies, I need to leave for another meeting. Looking forward to making a reality and roll out. John, thank you so much for participating. I really appreciate the time and attention you've given in being here and attending. We will send you all of the documents. Good. Moving on. So just to give you an indication, ladies and gentlemen, this is what I have asked the CEOs for and continue to ask CEOs for. And I've offered to come into companies, do presentations to managers as well as staff in the companies so that everybody understands where we're going and understands how we want their company to be classified as an excellent company. Because eventually we will initiate a grading system. When I say eventually, we're looking at by October 2019, a grading system of companies that are participating so that we can recognize those companies as excellent and distinguish them in the marketplace. So what I've said to CEOs is this. We need CEOs to see the value and agree with our value proposition, which I must tell you, those who've been exposed to and participated in the CEO forum have done so. We need CEOs to submit their companies for the pilot of the first 3 designations. We have already received 5, and we're continuing. Our doors are always open for additional companies to pilot. We need CEOs to start seeing and referring to practitioners as professionals in terms of technical, operational, or professional bands of professionalism. And here we will continue to submit articles, to submit online blogs, etc., interviews, which you will have access to, so that people understand the culture we are trying to generate, which is a culture of distinguishing employees who are technical, operational, or professional, and eventually those who are master practitioners. Because the next thing I asked CEOs for is I said to them, we want CEOs to nominate their senior practitioners and to be nominated themselves for purposes of attaining the Master Digital Professional designation. We want CEOs to encourage their staff to achieve professional recognition and to make it mandatory within a comfortable period of time when employment happens that all staff must be professionally designated by the professional body. And ideally there, we want a company to have a kind of policy that says within 12 months of your starting to work for this company, you must have obtained a professional designation from the professional body for digital practice, or we are recruiting people who are already professional technicians or operators or chartered professional digital practitioners. So that's the kind of language over time we're wanting to generate. And I think it's absolutely critical that everybody's on board with us as we're doing that kind of thing. As far as the public compact is concerned, we're saying this to the public at large. that over time, we only want you to do business with digital companies which are members of associations such as the IAB South Africa, because there is then an acceptable level of accountability and responsibility. People can be de-designated. They can lose their designation if behaviorally they do the wrong things, or if from a competency point of view, they don't keep current. We're also saying to the public at large, only interact with practitioners who are professionally designated by the PDP, because they are then accountable in terms of their competence and their ongoing lifelong learning on the one hand, and for their ethical and behavioral behavior on the other. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is ultimately where we're wanting to take this professional body. And the purpose of today's session is just to give you a brief introduction and to tell you that the next time we're getting together, it will be because you will have already seen the policies and procedures for quality assurance that we've put together, that you will have already seen the designation constructs for each of the designations that we've created, and importantly, that we will give you the draft of what we consider to be a summative assessment process for each of those designations that we are going to need your input on. And hopefully you'll be able to help us remediate those summative assessments, refine them, and then from an assessor and moderator point of view, even if it's only in-house for your companies, start nominating people who can be considered to be assessors and moderators and trained up, if they haven't already been trained as assessors and moderators for the needs of the professional body and for the designation centers that we're using in the professional body. Are there any questions or comments? Nothing. Okay, good. So let me say this. I want to, Chris says, sounds great, a lot to take in. I know, and I apologize for as much as I've covered. It will become familiar, I think, over time and with custom and practice. We will be meeting again. The majority of our meetings will be like this, digitally, but we will also give an opportunity for people to meet face to face as and when the need requires. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I think Jean said, when do we start? And that really is the question. When do we start? We start now. And you will all be asked to participate and be drawn into our activities. I think it's enough with the lofty promises, and it's time for delivery. So I really want to thank you for participating. Brandon says, excellent. Thank you, Ivor. Looking forward to working the machine. I love that. Well, thank you, Brandon. Yes, I'm looking forward to having you work the machine with us. Thank you so much, guys. And we will be sending you a number of documents. Please feel free to interact with us as you receive them, because I think it's only in knowing, it really is only in knowing what your response is that we will know whether we're on the right track or not. Duncan says, thanks. Looking forward to the next step. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate all of your time and your attendance.